What if I told you that throughout the Madeleine McCann investigation, there was a blind spot, a crucial detail that no one noticed in time? This detail might have been the missing piece to solve the case. Today, we will reveal why it was ignored and how it could have changed everything. If you, like me, are fascinated by dark mysteries and believe that every detail can uncover hidden truths, subscribe now and activate the notification bell. Here, every video is more than just a story. For 17 years, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann dominated headlines and investigations. Many theories emerged, countless leads were followed, and the world watched every new twist. But amidst all this chaos, there was something no one noticed, a crucial blind spot that could have changed everything. This detail was not just ignored due to a lack of evidence. It was obscured by conflicting theories, media pressure, and most importantly, human errors that shaped the case from the very beginning. Imagine this: witness reports that were never properly recorded, an investigative line potentially connected to global networks, dismissed without explanations. We are not talking about a simple oversight, but an error that could have buried the truth even before it surfaced. And when you look at this blind spot, it's not just a technical failure. It reflects something deeper: how haste, biases, and the pursuit of quick answers can erase valuable clues and perhaps the only chance to solve a mystery. Today, we will re-examine this overlooked point. We will magnify the detail that, if handled differently, could have written a different ending to Madeleine's story. And in doing so, we ask ourselves, to what extent was the truth buried by the very search for justice? When I started looking into this blind spot in the Madeleine McCann investigation, I couldn't get an idea out of my head. How could something so important go unnoticed? For years, I followed this case like so many of you, trying to understand, piecing things together. But when this detail came to light, it was like opening a book that seemed complete and realizing there were missing pages. It's impossible not to think about what her family went through and still goes through today. And now, knowing that perhaps something so simple, something that was there from the beginning, could have changed the course of everything, it ties my stomach in knots. This story is like an incomplete puzzle. You have the main image, but you know a crucial piece is missing. And it's exactly about this piece that we need to talk now, because to this day, it might be the key to uncovering what really happened. During the investigation into Madeleine McCann's disappearance, a series of leads emerged in the early days. Some, however, were dismissed or simply ignored. This is where we find one of the case's biggest blind spots, something that, if given proper attention, could have changed everything. One of the most obvious contradictions lies with the window of apartment 5A. From the start, the police and the press focused on the idea that it was used as an entry or exit point by the supposed kidnapper. But there was a problem. No signs of forced entry were found, and the window's position made it unlikely that someone could climb it without attracting attention. Still, the official narrative persisted with this hypothesis, while other possibilities, such as exiting through the front door, did not receive the same scrutiny. This inconsistency is even more intriguing when we cross the witness reports. One neighbor claimed to have seen, on the same night, a male figure near the back door holding something that appeared to be a bundle. This statement, recorded early in the investigation, was treated as secondary, while all attention turned to a witness who described a man walking with a child towards the beach. And then another contradiction arises. Years later, it was revealed that this last description possibly matched a father carrying his own son, a misunderstanding that could have diverted precious resources. If this line of investigation was based on a mistaken lead, what else might have been missed? Another point of interest is the presence of suspicious vehicles in the area in the days leading up to the disappearance. A white van was seen parked in front of the resort, with reports from local residents mentioning a man who seemed to be watching the apartments. Although it was recorded by the police, this information was not thoroughly investigated at the time. Years later, when the van was linked to a suspect with a history of violent crimes, this connection was already too cold to generate concrete progress. What aggravates these contradictions is the context in which they occurred. In the early days after the disappearance, media pressure and conflicts between British and Portuguese authorities created a chaos while conflicting theories dominated the headlines. The investigation was being conducted with a lens that focused on specific theories but left blind spots that could have been explored. This pattern of negligence is reflected in another worrying failure: the collection of data on individuals who were in the area. Witnesses stated that they saw unknown people photographing children at the resort, including Madeleine. These individuals were never identified or interrogated, and the only available description was treated as insufficient. These inconsistencies reveal a disturbing pattern. Instead of building the investigation based on all available clues, some lines were discarded before even being thoroughly analyzed. And when we look back at this blind spot, it leads us to an unsettling question. If these pieces had been connected at the right time, crime? Would we be closer today to knowing what happened to Madeleine? What became clear is that at the heart of this mystery, there are gaps that cannot be ignored. And it is precisely this that makes the next point so crucial. Because among the details that were left behind, one might be the piece that connects everything. When I think about the blind spot in Madeleine McCann's investigation, I recall another case that shocked the world: the disappearance of Etan Patz in 1979 in New York. Eaton was only 6 years old when he vanished, and for decades his story remained a mystery. Like Madeleine's case, the initial hours of the investigation were marked by ignored leads and a frantic search for answers. A witness reported seeing a suspicious man near Etan's school, but the police initially dismissed the report due to a lack of concrete evidence. Only years later, when this lead was revisited, did the investigation take an unexpected turn. But for many, it was too late. What bothers me most is how this pattern repeats itself. In Madeleine's case, we had suspicious vehicles, strange people photographing children, and contradictory statements that were never thoroughly investigated. The question that remains is, how many other cases, like Eaton's and Madeleine's, are connected by these same errors? It's frightening to think that, in both cases, the answers might have been within reach but were buried by time and negligence. And when we look at this, a bigger question arises. Are we losing the ability to see what truly matters while getting distracted by theories and biases? When we look at the blind spot in Madeleine McCann's investigation, two main theories begin to stand out, both laden with complexity, contradictions, and doubts that remain to this day. Each of them raises new questions and deepens the mystery, showing how different interpretations of the same case can lead to completely opposite paths. The first theory suggests that Madeleine was the victim of an opportunistic kidnapper, someone with no prior connection to the family who took advantage of a moment of vulnerability. This line of thought is based on reports of people seeing unknown individuals near the apartment in the days leading up to the disappearance. Some described a strange man observing the area, while others mentioned a vehicle that seemed to be suspiciously circulating the village. The problem is that this theory presents gaps that are hard to ignore. For example, how could someone acting so impulsively manage to avoid being noticed at the time of the crime? There were no signs of forced entry on the door or window, which raises the hypothesis that the kidnapper knew exactly how to enter and exit without drawing attention. This opens the door to a second, much more unsettling theory. This theory points to a larger plan, possibly involving a human trafficking network. Praia da Luz, where the McCann family was staying, was not just a tourist destination. The region was known to be used by gangs specialized in trafficking for transporting child disappearances in Europe. Patterns such as the use of white vehicles and reports of people observing children in public areas repeat themselves. And here is where the tension increases. In 2013, a review of the investigations revealed that at least 2 suspicious vehicles were in the area. During the week Madeleine disappeared, one of them, associated with a man with a history of abuse, was found years later in connection with criminal networks in Germany. If this line of investigation had been prioritized in the early days, would the outcome have been different? But Madeleine's case doesn't live solely on evidence and theories. It also carries the conflicts that arose between the involved authorities. From the beginning, the Portuguese and British police disagreed on how to conduct the case. While the local investigators focused on theories pointing to the possibility of an accident or the parents' involvement, the British team insisted on connections with organized crime. This dispute consumed precious time and diverted focus from leads that could have led to answers. Media pressure only worsened the situation. Sensational headlines turned Madeleine into a global symbol of lost innocence, but also distorted the investigation. Details were leaked before they were even analyzed, and each new theory gained disproportionate attention, often without basis. This chaotic environment left crucial questions unanswered. Why were reports of suspicious vehicles not investigated more thoroughly? How did the individuals seen photographing children at the resort pool manage to disappear without a trace? And what about the witnesses? One of the most significant statements made by a friend of the McCann family described a man carrying a child on the night of the disappearance. This description shaped much of the initial narrative, but years later, it was discovered that this man was actually a father carrying his own son. If this initial lead was wrong, how many others were discarded or misinterpreted? In the end, these theories not only generate doubts, but also lead us to a bigger dilemma. Are we looking at Madeleine's case from the right perspective, or is the blind spot, ignored at the beginning, still obscuring the truth? And as we try to answer these questions, a third path emerges, a path that could unite the disconnected elements and reveal something even more surprising. The blind spot in Madeleine McCann's investigation hides something that, at first glance, seemed insignificant. A brief account from a witness who saw a figure standing near the apartment door on the night of the disappearance. It wasn't the same man described as carrying a child to the beach, but someone who stood still for a few minutes, observing in silence. This information was recorded but never cross-referenced with other leads, falling into oblivion like so many other details. What unsettles me is the simplicity of this fact. Why would someone stand there, just watching? The silence that night held more than the absence of sounds. It seemed to hide something that could only be perceived upon closer inspection, and now knowing what we know about the calculated behavior of human trafficking networks, this solitary figure gains a weight we hadn't previously perceived. If this person was the key, why was he never identified? And more importantly, what else is buried in testimonies and records that haven't been reviewed yet? The answer might lie in a clue we already know, but haven't fully understood. Over the years, several reviews of the Madeleine McCann investigation have brought to light details that were initially overlooked. But there is one specific discovery that completely changed the tone of the case. During the analysis of phone data, records of calls made on the night of May 3, 2007 emerged. These records showed unusual activity from an unknown number that remained near the resort for hours. Initially, these calls did not attract attention. However, upon revisiting this data years later, it was discovered that the number was linked to a person already known to the German police for involvement with human trafficking networks, Christian Bruckner. He was one of the suspects who had direct connections with similar crimes in European tourist areas. Here is the most disturbing point. Bruckner was not only in Portugal at the time, but had access to a vehicle identified by witnesses as suspicious near the disappearance site. Additionally, he had a history that included breaking into residences, a profile that seemed to fit perfectly with the narrative of a meticulous kidnapper. But there is another detail that changes everything. During searches at an old property owned by Bruckner, a diary was found that, according to police sources, referenced targets of children and even mentions of physical characteristics similar to Madeleine's. Although these elements were not definitive proof, they opened an investigative path that seemed to have been ignored for a long time. And there's more. Another neglected line was the testimony of a woman who, the day after the disappearance, reported seeing a blonde girl being carried onto a small boat at a nearby marina. This description was never cross-referenced with the call times or the suspicious vehicles, leaving a gap in the narrative that could have led to new discoveries. This connection between phone data, suspicious vehicles, and a crucial witness account could have been a game-changer. However, it was treated in a fragmented manner, with pieces that never fully came together. This raises an inevitable question. If this information had been urgently addressed at the time, could Madeleine have been found? As we investigate further, a pattern emerges. The network of connections between the case's elements was never fully mapped. The strategic location of Praia da Luz, close to known maritime trafficking routes, combined with the presence of individuals with criminal backgrounds, points to an operation much larger than a simple isolated crime. And the most intriguing part is that even with this new information, many questions remain. Who owned the reported boat? Why weren't the calls made on the night of the disappearance investigated sooner? And more importantly, why didn't these details receive the necessary attention while the trail was still hot? This twist does not solve the case, but adds another layer to the mystery, a layer that shows how much can still be hidden. If this information has already changed the perspective so much, imagine what more could be revealed with a new analysis. It is at this point that we need to delve deeper now. How do these hidden details connect the dots that seemed disconnected for so long? Studies indicate that about 8 million children disappear each year worldwide, and only a small fraction of these cases are solved. When it comes to possible connections with trafficking networks, the statistics are even more alarming. Less than 1% of victims are recovered. Madeleine's case defies these odds, not only due to its notoriety, but also because of the global impact it caused. However, these numbers reveal something deeper. How many cases remain unnoticed while possible answers are lost over time? Thinking about this is distressing. We are not just dealing with a mystery, but with a reflection of how the world repeatedly fails to protect the most vulnerable. This makes me question, what more can be done to turn the tide? Madeleine McCann's case is not just a mystery story. It is a mirror that reflects deep flaws in our investigations and how we handle the truth. Throughout this video, we have reviewed blind spots that could have made all the difference and connected pieces that should never have been left aside. But the question remains, to what extent can these errors be corrected? And is there still time to reopen doors that were hastily closed? These details that we spent so much time ignoring might hold the answers we seek. If you watch this far, I want to hear your opinion. What do you think really happened? Comment, "I seek the truth," so I know you are part of this journey. And if you have any suggestions for mysteries or cases for us to bring to the channel, write in the comments. comments. I'm always attentive to your ideas, and who knows, the next video might be inspired by something you suggest. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. In the next video, we will dive into an even more intriguing case where ignored leads led to a shocking twist. Click on the end screen and join me for another mystery that will challenge everything you think you know. Stay vigilant, guardians of mystery. The truth is out there, but only those who refuse to give up can find it.